All right, so have you ever heard like the sound of creaking wood
Yeah.
and then like a crash right after it?
Oh, yeah, I know that sound.
Yeah, well, that
You're
sound,
still that.
believe it or not, could be your deck collapsing.
Really?
Yeah. And this actually happened not that long ago in Richards Bay
Oh, wow.
to a family, and it became like a really expensive problem for them, and it was all because of a stump removal job. It seemed like a really good deal at the time, just R900.
R900, wow. That's pretty cheap.
Yeah, it seemed like a steal
Mhm.
right. But turns out those roots, they didn't fully get rid of all of them,
Ah.
and they just kept growing right into the foundation of their house.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so it's like you think you're saving money right,
Hmm.
but then later down the line, it ends up costing you way more.
Yeah, that initial saving, it's a bit of a false economy, isn't it?
It totally is. And that story, that collapsing deck, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Really?
Because in this deep dive, we are going to Richards Bay to uncover something that we think you're going to find pretty shocking.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah. We're going to talk about the shady practices of unlicensed stump grinders.
Unlicensed stump grinders.
Yeah. And the risks they pose not only to your property, but potentially to the ecosystem as well.
Hmm.
It's a pretty big revelation, actually, when you start to think about it.
Yeah, if you connect this to the bigger picture, you start to see how these like seemingly small incidents can have much wider effects.
Right, exactly.
It's not just about like how things look. It can really mess with the natural way things decompose, and like
Yeah.
we're going to talk about later.
Yeah,
It can even like create a pathway for pests.
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So our mission today for you listening is really simple. We want to give you the knowledge to spot these scams, like right away,
Okay.
to protect your biggest investment, your home right,
Right.
and to understand the true costs of cutting corners when it comes to getting rid of stumps.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We've done a lot of research, looked at some pretty shocking investigative reports, talked to homeowners who have been tricked, and we've even seen visual evidence comparing the work of professionals to these scam artists.
So like right off the bat, what makes these scams so effective? Like why are people falling for them?
I think it all boils down to that initial price tag, right?
Yeah, the promise of saving money.
Exactly. Like, who doesn't want to save a little bit of cash?
Of course.
But what we've learned is that cheap price can come with some really expensive secrets.
Hidden costs.
Exactly. So let's break down how these scams actually work.
Yeah, let's do it.
What are the common tactics that these unlicensed operators use to kind of trick people?
Well, from what we've seen, a clear pattern emerges.
You okay?
The first thing is they use these really small grinding machines.
Mm-hmm.
They're often portable, less powerful, and they can only really handle what you can see above ground.
Right.
They can grind deep enough to reach the main root system. So it's appealing because it seems cheap, but it's going to cost you a lot more later.
All right. So it looks like the stump is gone, at least from what you can see. But underneath the surface, there's this whole network of roots that are still alive and growing.
Exactly.
And that leads to their second trick, which is all about creating an illusion,
Right.
like a fake out.
Yeah, so what they do is they use the wood chips that are left over from the little bit of grinding they did manage to do, and they spread those chips around to make it look like the whole stump is gone.
So it looks all neat and tidy, right?
Exactly. And the homeowner's initially happy, but it's all for show.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg.
Right.
And then the final part of their scam, and this is the most frustrating, is they just disappear, they take your money, and by the time the roots start growing back, which can be anywhere from 6 to 18 months, they're gone.
Yeah. No warranty, no follow-up.
Exactly.
And that's when the real problems begin. Those roots, they don't just sit there, they start to decompose.
Right.
And that can attract some unwanted guests.
And when you say unwanted guests, you're talking about like bugs and stuff.
Oh,
Right?
one unwanted guest in particular. Termites.
Termites. Oh, no.
Yeah, we found a really disturbing case in Nalonga. This homeowner paid for what they thought was complete stump removal.
Uh-huh.
A year later, nightmare scenario.
What happened?
Our $85,000 worth of termite damage.
Oh, my gosh.
Imagine the shock.
I can't even imagine.
All because they tried to save a bit of money up front.
Yeah, and our 85,000, that's a lot of money.
It's a huge financial blow for anyone.
It is.
And it shows what can happen if you don't get the job done right the first time. And what's really interesting is that the pest control expert traced a termite highway.
A termite highway. What's that?
It's basically a tunnel that termites create.
Uh-huh.
And they traced it from the rotting roots of that supposed removed stump right into the ceiling of the house.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
So basically, these scam artists are creating a buffet for termites by leaving all those roots underground.
It's like a 5-star termite restaurant.
Sure. And you end up paying way more in the long run to fix the damage.
Exactly. So you might think you're being smart by saving money at first, but it could end up costing you a fortune. It's a classic case of false economy.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the termites, is it?
No, it's not.
There's also the issue of how much of the root system is actually left behind.
Right. We saw some pretty convincing evidence of this using thermal imaging.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they used a FLIR camera to show what's happening beneath the surface.
Okay.
Even after a stump has been ground down, you can see the heat signature of the roots that are still alive and active.
Wow. So you might think everything's fine above ground, but underneath, there's this whole network of roots just waiting to cause trouble.
Exactly. And we saw an example where a homeowner paid R$3,500 for this shoddy work initially,
Okay.
but then they had to spend another R$8,200 to have it fixed properly by a professional.
Wow.
So they ended up paying way more than if they had just hired the right person from the start.
It's a double whammy. You pay for the bad job, and then you pay again to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
All while running the risk of damage to your house and those pesky termites.
Yeah, it's not a good situation.
So how can our listeners avoid these scams? What are the red flags to look out for?
A big one is the equipment they use.
Oh, okay.
We saw a huge difference between the tools used by scammers versus the professionals.
Right.
The scammers often use small grinders.
Yeah.
They're portable, but they're not powerful enough to get rid of all the roots.
Right.
They just want to make the stump disappear quickly and cheaply.
Be look good on the surface.
Exactly. But the pros use industrial-grade grinders.
Oh, wow.
Big, powerful machines designed to extract the whole root system.
So they get rid of everything.
Yep. It's not just about making the stump disappear from sight. It's about removing the entire root ball so it doesn't grow back and attract pests.
So you're saying the equipment is a big giveaway.
Absolutely. And if you're getting quotes, don't be afraid to ask about the type of grinder they'll be using. If they're hesitant to tell you or if it sounds too small, that's a warning sign.
So to sum it all up, what we've learned is that those cheap stump removal deals, they can end up being really costly in the long run.
Yeah, you might save money up front, but you could be setting yourself up for some serious headaches down the line.
Exactly. So before you hire anyone, think about the potential damage those roots can cause and the risk of termites. It's not worth it.
Yeah, you got to think long term.
Exactly. So for those of you listening right now, think about your own property. Have you had any stumps removed? Are you planning any landscaping work that might involve removing trees? This information is important for you and the safety of your home.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder about something else.
What's that?
Well, we've talked about the financial cost and the damage to your house, but what about the environment? What happens to the ecosystem when all those roots are left to rot underground?
That's a really good question. It's not just about our homes, it's about the bigger picture.
Exactly. And that's something for you to think about. What kind of impact are we having on the environment when we don't remove those roots properly? It's something to consider.
It really is.
Thanks for listening.
And thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.